74 games? That's all it took. 74 games for Caitlin Clark to do something no player in WNBA history had ever done faster hit 200 three-pointers in her career. The old record? 81 games, set by Katie Smith, a name that had sat at the top of that list for years, untouched. But here's the thing, the 200 threes isn't even the scariest number from that night. Because on the same night Clark quietly rewrote the three-point record book, she also did something else, something that had literally never happened before in the history of this league. 45 points, 10 assists, the first player ever to hit both marks in a single game. Two records, one night, one player who, just a few weeks earlier, half the basketball world was calling hard to watch. That's what we're getting into today. Because the real story here isn't just what Caitlin Clark did on the court on July 17th. It's everything that happened before it. The coach who tried to bench her, the body that wouldn't cooperate, and the critics who thought they'd already written her off. Let's start at the beginning, because this story didn't start with a highlight. It started with a warning. Rewind a few weeks. Caitlin Clark isn't dealing with critics because she's playing badly. She's dealing with critics because of how she's playing the reactions to fouls, the arguments with officials, the body language that some fans found off-putting. For weeks, that narrative built. Some of the same outlets that once championed her were now calling her performances hard to watch. Clark had already missed multiple games this season, managing that injury. And every time she came back, there was a new question hanging over the broadcast. How many minutes is she actually going to play tonight? Her head coach, Stephanie White, made the team's priority clear over and over. It wasn't about winning one game, it was about protecting a career. White put it plainly before one game that the long-term health of her star guard came first, no matter what Clark herself wanted. And everyone around the team knew exactly what Clark wanted. She didn't want a minutes restriction, she wanted to play, all of it. That tension came to a head in the worst possible way just days earlier. Clark made her long-awaited return against the Golden State Valkyries, and it fell completely flat. 4 of 12 shooting, 10 points, a blowout loss. If you were building a highlight reel of Caitlin Clark's low point this season, that game would be Exhibit A. A player fighting through a back injury, a coach actively trying to limit her minutes for her own protection, a fan base starting to sour on her on-court demeanor, and a comeback game that already flopped once. This is not the setup for a historic night. This is the setup for a quiet, forgettable one. Then Friday happened, and Stephanie White made a decision before tip-off that she thought was simple. It turned out to be anything but. Before the Fever took the floor against the Seattle Storm, Stephanie White had already made up her mind. Clark's back still wasn't 100%. She was going to play under a minutes restriction. That was the plan. Nobody told Caitlin Clark's game plan that. She came out aggressive from the opening minutes, attacking the rim, finding her rhythm early, despite admitting afterward that it had been a struggle to get back into form after missing time. And then the game did what tight, physical WNBA games do. It got messy. Indiana built a lead as big as 17 points. Then they nearly threw the whole thing away, watching Seattle claw all the way back until the Fever found themselves down by 8 points with just 4 minutes left on the clock. This is exactly the moment a coach pulls a guy on a minutes restriction. The game's slipping away, the body's still recovering, the responsible move is to protect the player. Except Clark wasn't going anywhere. At halftime, she'd already told White how she felt. She felt good, and she did not want to lose this game. So when the fourth quarter turned into a dogfight, there was no version of this where Caitlin Clark was watching the final minutes from the bench. She said it herself, point blank, in the post-game press conference, that if anyone on that coaching staff had tried to pull her in that moment, they would, in her words, get an earful. Not just from her, from the trainers too. Everyone, she said, already knew better than to try. Think about what that actually means. This isn't a rookie ignoring medical advice out of ego. This is a player who has spent the entire season being managed, restricted, held back for her own good, and in the one moment it actually mattered, she made the call herself, and her coaching staff let her. So with the clock bleeding down, the fever trailing, and every reason in the world for Clark to be sitting in a suit on the bench managing her back injury, she stayed on the floor. And what happened next is the reason we're all still talking about this 3 days later. Let's just sit in the numbers for a second, because they don't need much embellishment. 45 points, a career high, a new Indiana Fever franchise record, 10 assists, giving her the first 40.10 assist game in WNBA history. 4 steals, 2 blocks. 11 made field goals on 18 attempts. 6 three-pointers. 17 made free throws out of 19 attempts, and she did all of it in 29 minutes. Less playing time than almost every other starter on the floor that night, because that minutes restriction never actually went away. It just got tested to its absolute limit. The biggest shot of the night came late, a go-ahead three-pointer with under a minute to play, the shot that turned an 8-point fourth-quarter deficit into a 110-107 win. Fever fans who watched Indiana blow a 17-point lead got to watch their star guard put the game right back in their hands. And buried inside all of that chaos was the record we opened this video with, Clark becoming the fastest player in WNBA history to reach 200 career three-pointers, doing it in 74 games and blowing past Katie Smith's mark of 81. When reporters asked her afterward how she explained a night like this, her answer was almost eerily calm. She said, "Some nights, you just have it," and she felt it even before the ball was tipped. That after struggling to find her rhythm coming back from missed time, she saw this as her chance to come out and be aggressive early. That's it. That's the whole explanation. Not a grand speech. Not a call-out of her critics. Just a player who trusted herself in the exact moment everyone else was still asking whether she should even be on the floor. But the loudest reaction to what Clark had just done wasn't coming from the broadcast booth. It was happening behind a closed door in a locker room where a video camera happened to be rolling. After the final buzzer, the Indiana Fever's own social media team posted something from inside that locker room, and it's become the moment people can't stop replaying. Stephanie White, the same coach who walked into that game planning to limit Clark's minutes, turned to her team and simply said it twice. "See, my God, my God." Then she went through it herself, out loud, to the whole locker room, the franchise scoring record, the first 4-0 and 1-0 game in league history, and one more stat that might be the most Caitlin Clark stat of all. She and teammate Kelsey Mitchell combined for 75 points that night, the most any Fever duo has ever scored together in a single game. Now hold that image next to where this video started. Weeks of hard to watch. Weeks of critics questioning her temperament, her reactions, her fit in this league. And then a locker room video of her own head coach, the person managing her minutes, protecting her body, the one person with every reason to be cautious about her, completely losing her composure out of pure disbelief at what Clark had just done. You couldn't script a cleaner answer to the critics if you tried. Except nobody scripted it. It just happened on a random Friday night in Indianapolis, in front of a phone camera in a locker room. So where does all of this actually leave Caitlin Clark and the rest of this season? Because as good as that night was, it might not even be the ceiling. Here's the part that should genuinely unsettle every other team in this league. Caitlin Clark just put up the most complete statistical performance in WNBA history, and she did it while still working her way back from injury, still on a restricted workload, still not fully unleashed. She's only in her second professional season. The players who hold the long-standing three-point records in this league built those numbers over entire careers. Clark is chasing them down before she's even hit her prime. So ask yourself the question this video has been building toward the entire time. If this is what Caitlin Clark looks like operating under restrictions, still managing a back injury, still capped on minutes, still just a couple of games removed from a total dud of a comeback performance, What does she look like the day her medical team finally clears her completely? The 2-0-0 three-point record now belongs to her. The question isn't whether Caitlin Clark is going to keep breaking WNBA records. It's how many are even left standing by the time she's done. If you want to see the next record fall in real time, hit subscribe because with Caitlin Clark, the next one might come sooner than anyone expects.